Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Stefano Gennarini. I'm the Vice President for Legal Studies of the Center on Family and Human Rights, also known as CFAM here. Today here we have a different event. Certainly this is the first time that our organization, CFAM, addresses homelessness, and we want to bring a special focus on the importance of the family in the context of social protection policies, housing policies, and efforts to address and fight against homelessness. Indeed, strategies and programs to address homelessness cannot be effective without addressing family breakdown and instability. Surveys across many countries have consistently found that one of the most commonly cited causes of homelessness is the breakdown of the family. This will not come as a surprise to those who are familiar with the overwhelming social science research that shows how the family benefits individuals and families, and how marriage has an economic and financial benefit for individuals and their families. When the family breaks down, when men and women are unable to exercise their fundamental human right to marry and found a family because of social, economic, or legal barriers, persons become more vulnerable to financial insecurity, poverty, and ultimately also homelessness. And the urgency of protecting and strengthening the family is underlined by the magnitude of the importance of the family as the sole social safety net, or the most important social safety net, for over 5 billion people all over the world. According to the International Labor Organization, only 29% of the global population enjoys comprehensive social security. That means that over 70% of the world's population either has an inadequate patchwork of social security protection or no social protection at all. For those more than 5 billion people around the world, the family is the sole recourse when they become vulnerable to homelessness. As the General Assembly has already recognized, it is essential to develop laws and policies to aid family formation, to enhance family stability, and to make particular efforts to protect children and youth by promoting family stability and supporting families in providing mutual support, including in their role as nurturers and educators of children. This can be achieved first and foremost by protecting the rights of the family already enshrined in human rights law, and by fulfilling already existing political commitments to strengthen and protect the family. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights and binding international instruments reserve singular protections for the family in recognition of the family's irreplaceable role as natural environment for the growth and well-being of all its members, and particularly children. Empowering and protecting the family is not just smart policy, it is a human rights imperative. And it is not accurate to say that international law does not define the family. Article 16 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights defines the family as the natural and fundamental group unit of society, and declares that the family is entitled to protection by society and the state. These words are repeated across several widely ratified human rights treaties, as well as the laws and constitutions of a majority of member states. International law further predicates the complementarity and equal rights of women and men in the context of marriage and family formation. Governments need to stop debating what counts as a family and need to start protecting the family, as it has always been understood in international law. International law established that the family is formed when a man and a woman exercise their right to freely marry and found a family. States may extend social protections to other types of bonds between individuals, friendships, even sentimental attachments between persons of the same sex and other relations. But only the family is entitled by international law to protection by society and the states, in the sense the family is unique, no doubt because of its role and status as the natural and fundamental group unit of society. Indeed, the family is a proper subject of human rights and a bearer of rights. The program of action of the 1994 International Conference on Population and Development, for example, referred to the rights of families. Similarly, the program of action of the 1995 World Summit for Social Development, whose 25th anniversary we are celebrating this year, recognized that the family is entitled to receive comprehensive protection and support. When it comes to social and economic rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights does not merely entitle the family to generic social and economic protection and assistance like other international human rights treaties, but it requires states to provide the family with the widest possible protection and assistance. This must be applied in the field of housing and urban planning in particular, and to other structural causes of homelessness. And it must be understood as part of the right to an adequate standard of living, which international law predicates not just for the individual, but for the individual and his family. It is not at all accurate to claim that the treatment of the family in international law is an exclusive Western construct, as if single-parent families or multi-generational families were not understood to come under its protection. The singular protections reserved for the family under international law should not be understood in an exclusive sense. Far from it. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights explicitly states that motherhood deserves special protection and that children are entitled to the same protections regardless of whether they are born in or out of wedlock. That is why the General Assembly and at the Copenhagen Social Summit, governments explicitly committed to improve the condition of the single parent in society and ensuring that single-parent families and female-headed households or female-maintained households receive the social support they need, including support for adequate housing, child care, and recognition. Let's face it, comprehensive social protection for all by 2030 is not going to happen without policies to protect and strengthen the family, nor is it realistic to expect it by 2050. Several demographic factors combined with the rapid pace of urbanization make the protection of the family an urgent priority. Fiscal projections for both developed and developing countries are dire because of lower fertility worldwide. Social security systems premised on intergenerational transfers of wealth are slowly but surely collapsing. Some demographers project social and economic strife as a result. Workforces in some developed and developing countries are already shrinking, and demographers warn that migration is a short-term stopgap that will not work in the long run. There is evidence that laws and social policies to empower and protect the family through baby bonuses, eliminating marriage tax penalties, promoting work-family balance, recognition of unpaid care, helping families with adequate housing, promoting and improving family stability, and other such policies indeed are successful in supporting the family. These policies would also help diffuse social tensions and strengthening intergenerational family bonds. But the fact is this: in a world where the family is the most important social safety net for over 5 billion people, and where social protection systems are at a breaking point, the international community and governments have to make sure that the family is the focus of social protection policies. The family is the last best hope for too many people around the world for the international community not to recognize its place and role. With that opening statement, I want to now welcome our panel and our first speaker today. Our first speaker is Marion Boteju. She is the Chief of Staff for the Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of New York. She's been the CEO of Catholic Formation, an executive director at the American Principles Project, and the executive director of a fundraising consultancy that, amongst others, has consulted with Habitat, Mercy International, and McKinsey. And she is going to talk about the work of the Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of New York. Welcome, Marion. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. And thank you for inviting Catholic Charities to be a part of this panel. We're really excited to do so, particularly since the focus of our work, let me start this timer, the focus of our work is so very much based on support of the family unit here in New York. So just by way of background, Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of New York at our fundamental core and mission is to uphold the dignity of the human person as made in the image of God by serving the basic needs of the poor, troubled, frail, and oppressed of all religions. We collaborate with non-Catholic and Catholic partners to build a compassionate and just society. Through a network of over 90 independent agencies, Catholic Charities delivers, coordinates, and advocates for quality human services and programs touching almost every human need. Since 1917, we've been supporting New Yorkers in need across 5 main areas: protecting and nurturing children and youth, feeding the hungry and sheltering the homeless, which we'll be talking about today, strengthening families and resolving crises, supporting those who are physically and emotionally challenged, and welcoming and integrating immigrants and refugees into our great metropolitan area. So the neglected child, the homeless family, and the hungry senior are among those whom we provide help and create hope, for whom we provide help and create hope. We rebuild lives and touch almost every human need, promptly, locally, day in and day out, and always with compassion and dignity. We like to say at Catholic Charities that we help our neighbors as you would like to be helped if you or your family were in need. So I was invited to speak about homelessness and our work with meeting the needs of the homeless in New York. So I'd like to provide a few statistics about what that means for us here in New York. So in recent years, homelessness in New York City has reached the highest level since the Great Depression in the 1930s. According to the New York City Coalition for the Homeless, with a population of over 8.4 million people, 1 in every 125 New Yorkers is homeless. That's nearly 70,000 men, women, and children in one of the most developed cities in the world. Every night, nearly 4,000 people sleep on the streets, subways, or other public spaces every evening. And these are folks who we would refer to as street homeless. So there's a distinction between those who are street homeless or those who are homeless and living in shelters. The number of homeless New Yorkers sleeping at night in a municipal shelter is now 62% higher than it was 10 years ago. The number of homeless single adults is 142% higher than it was 10 years ago. So I'll give you a few more statistics. Over 63,000 homeless people were residing in New York City shelters in November 2019. Close to 4,000 New Yorkers experienced street homelessness. The Department of Homeless Services in New York quotes about 60,000 people in our New York City shelter system at any given time. The Department of Youth and Community Development here in New York has 357 young people registered currently at any given month in the system as actively homeless. And over 4,000 New Yorkers are registered as homeless that are also identified as folks living with HIV/AIDS. So the key takeaway is that people of all races, socioeconomic backgrounds experience homelessness here in New York, but the predominantly homeless population by demographic, racial demographic, are African American and Latino New Yorkers. So approximately 57% of heads of households who are living in shelters in New York identify as African American, and 32% identify as Latino. And that's actually according to a recent report put out by the New York City Council Speaker's Office. Families make up more than 2/3 of the homeless shelter population, which is a staggering figure. Tonight, close to 15,000 families will sleep in shelters in New York City. 22,000 of the 22,000 children are members of those 14,000 families, and there are 22,000 adults who are members of the close to 15,000 families that I quoted. In New York City, 1/3 of the children live below the poverty line, and when we think about homelessness and where it's located or concentrated rather in New York, there are 2 main areas: the South Bronx and East Harlem. These are areas that are impacted by concentrated poverty, burdened with high crime rates, poor health outcomes, and poor housing conditions. And when you think about the context of issues that face children and pose threats to child welfare, living in those neighborhoods in and of themselves are a huge threat. The primary cause for homelessness, particularly among families, is the lack of affordable housing. So here in New York, skyrocketing rents relative to minimal wage growth puts stressors on households. 60% of New Yorkers lack emergency savings to cover even 3 months' worth of basic expenses like food or rent. However, I'd like to point out that there are multiple triggers or indicators that put families at risk of becoming homeless, and it's not just about affordable housing. And these are areas that we need to pay attention to if we're serious about preventing homelessness as opposed to treating homelessness. So some key indicators: mental illness, substance abuse, the existence of severe medical issues, the experience of traumatic life events, eviction, difficulty in sustaining employment, living in at-risk neighborhoods, as well as just being exposed to natural disasters or various unexpected circumstances that can render someone homeless. I guess what I'm trying to say is people become homeless who you wouldn't think are capable of becoming homeless. In New York, many people are living paycheck to paycheck away from becoming homeless. And so there isn't just one picture of what homelessness looks like in New York. Catholic Charities takes a three-prong approach, preventative approach to responding to people who are facing homelessness. One, we provide services, including affordable housing. Two, we engage in advocacy on the city, state, and federal level on issues that impact those at risk. And we work with partners, so collaboration, strengthening, and building partnerships is very important to the work that we do. We run a vast network of soup kitchens and food pantries, emergency shelters, emergency and transitional housing to help families who are homeless and children who are homeless. We run job training workshops, provide English language learning. We take care of children who are in some of the schools where Catholic Charities has a presence, public schools, by giving them the resources that they need to even come to school and function. Very recently, we actually installed washer dryers at a public school in New York where Catholic Charities runs a youth program called Alianza, because the teachers in our program noticed that children were coming into school and were just wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in weeks. So in the last year, through these services and interventions, we've served about 109,000 people and provided $81 million in services. 12,000 families have prevented from becoming homeless. We've placed about 5,700 families in affordable housing across New York, including housing that we have built. We've helped 14,000 odd individuals with emergency overnight shelter. And I'd also like to say that meeting homelessness and combating homelessness here in New York and in most metropolitan cities also has a lot to do with tackling the basic issue of hunger. So we've provided close to 6,000 nutritious meals through community centers across New York City. With homeless prevention, I'd like to talk about a couple of things that we do methodologically that we found to be really effective, and that is what we call a comprehensive case management approach to anyone who walks into a Catholic Charities office or calls us. So what does that mean? That means we treat every single person as a unique case and a unique circumstance. So no one has the same exact story. We have professional caseworkers who work with a client that would come into our offices and act as an intermediary, whether it's between a landlord, mobilizing other community organizations to meet their needs. If they're having trouble paying their bills and they're afraid of becoming homeless, we provide them with financial management training workshops to help them stabilize. We help them access resources such as rental subsidies that are available through government resources. We represent them in housing eviction prevention proceedings. We provide assistance with back rent. So these are examples of some interventions that we provide to help prevent people from becoming homeless, which I think is probably the best way to try to tackle this issue, because once someone enters a system and becomes homeless, it's quite difficult and a much longer trajectory to turn that around. Catholic Charities also builds affordable housing, and we've been doing that for several decades now. and we call that permanent affordable housing. So getting people who are homeless off the street into shelters is a very temporary solution. It's necessary and important for their welfare, but for their long-term health and livelihood and their ensuring their basic dignity, making sure that they have a home they can afford is key to that. So one of our agencies, the Association of Catholic Homes, actually builds affordable housing here in New York City as well as in the Hudson Valley. We recently completed a project in the South Bronx called St. Augustine's Affordable Housing, and you'll hear some of my colleagues here speak about their own experiences with homelessness, and they may or may not have encountered some of these interventions in their neighborhoods. We have under construction several units of affordable housing, and 300 units of affordable housing at a site in the Bronx called Second Farms. We're working with St. Vincent de Paul as well to provide housing for seniors. One of the other things that we do at our affordable housing units and developments is provide what we call on-site case management. And so from a intervention and prevention perspective, there are some folks who need affordable housing who face severe setbacks in allowing them to stabilize. So they might need mental health support services, continuing educational training, substance abuse intervention. And so we believe at Catholic Charities, those people too deserve to live in dignified, affordable housing, and giving them a house, giving them an apartment to live in is not enough. You need to journey with them. You need to get them into a place where they can be more self-reliant, and what we like to say is take them out of crisis mode. So this model of not only building affordable housing, but also providing case management at some of these sites that are dealing with special populations is one of our methodologies. We also provide services as far as temporary and transitional residences, whether it's referrals to other organizations that are working in the space, and this is where partnerships are key. We have organizations in New York in our federated system of Catholic Charities that provide services like Good Shepherd Services, Nazareth Housing, the Covenant House. And we very recently, in the last 2 years, created a program called the Holy Rosary Stabilization Beds Program, which is actually an intervention for folks who have been homeless for a number of years, who actually have no other alternative. A shelter won't take them because they're either drug users, current drug users, or have severe mental health or physical health issues. So what we do at this particular site, and I believe we have 17 beds at that site, is we try to build trust with these individuals by saying to them, you have a place here to come. In the hours that you are with us in this facility, you cannot use any illegal substances, you cannot put yourself or any of the folks you are residing with in any kind of jeopardy, but we are here to work with you. If you need to see a doctor, we'll connect you with a doctor. If you need to see a mental health counselor, we can connect you with a counselor. If you need to get back in touch with your family, if you need help with your immigration status, we're here to help you. But with some of these special populations that we work with, we find that building trust is key, and treating people who are in a very difficult situation, sometimes for many years, with respect, and acknowledging them as for who they are, for where they are, and extending them a place where they can feel safe and start the journey back. As a point of discussion and just ongoing attention, I'd like to say for us at Catholic Charities, partnerships are key to addressing homelessness. And through our partnerships, we work to raise awareness of the issue, we engage in advocacy, and we coordinate to provide what we think are the best and most suitable responses. And we try to ensure that no one is left behind or ignored. And my timer is telling me I have to stop, so I will wrap up pretty quickly. Some of the partnerships that we value and prioritize and take great efforts to maintain are our partnerships with government. So New York City Council members, the mayor's office, New York State officials, and various departments that deal with addressing housing and homeless issues. It allows us also to educate, to continue to educate and be educated on the crises that face families and children in New York. For us, partnership is an opportunity to dialogue and to teach each other. We can't always work on everything together, but where we can work together, we do. And I think that that's a critical point for us, and one that we really pride ourselves in, is that we make an effort to come and show up and sit at the table and have those discussions. We also value partnerships with other nonprofits that deal with issues facing the family as it relates to homelessness, including, in many cases, non-Catholic partners, because we find that many of these groups that are working on issues of homelessness, other NGOs and nonprofits, do understand the key role of the family to stabilizing communities, and to responding to what we see kind of as a degradation, right, of the makeup of communities. When you look at the demographic composition of folks that are living in crisis in neighborhoods that face some of these crises, these are communities that value family, that would never think about moving out of the neighborhood they've been in, would never want to leave their parents or their children, but for whatever reason are in a situation where they've had to make some bad decisions and are now looking for a way back. So I would say that cultivating our partnerships with other nonprofits it has been key to our success. Also working with other faith leaders and interreligious groups, working with community boards, and private and corporate partners, we have found that we have many friends and allies in the corporate world who are socially conscious and think of this issue as being one of the key social determinants of health in New York City, and I'm sure on many of the other major cities around the world. So I think I'd just like to wrap up by thanking CFAM for inviting Catholic Charities to talk a little bit about what we do and how we go about engaging in this work, and I guess as takeaways, stressing the importance of working with local organizations when thinking about setting effective policies and building implementable solutions. A lot of times we have policy conversations on a very high level, and I realize where I'm sitting as I'm saying that, but I think that making sure that we have a right pulse of what's happening on the ground means you have to be on the ground and work with people who are on the ground. Sometimes with people you may disagree with, but you still have to sit at the table and have conversations and get a sense of, well, what is happening, and how can we work together to best respond. And that becomes really important in implementation. Because organizations and people who are on the ground who have credibility are the people that folks who are in crisis will turn to and will trust, and who will be in it for the long haul. They will not leave when funding leaves. They will not leave when things are difficult. And so that an appreciation for working with local organizations, I think, is very important in tackling this issue, but certainly many issues that the UN takes up. Also, prioritizing advocacy across parties, across beliefs, across various ideological lines, because the growth that we make together, and where we can help because of our various areas of influence, we can help. But I think a commitment to advocacy and awareness building, and a commitment to partnership and collaboration. So that note, I'd like to say thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Marian. That was very helpful. It's one of the great things about having you here is that everybody who comes to the UN comes across homeless people every day, just on their way into work, and to see a little bit of the work that you're doing here in the city where we all live and work, is really helpful, and especially to see the great work that the Archdiocese is doing, or the Catholic Charities are doing in this area, but one of the things that we wanted to do in this event is to go even more at a granular level. So we don't only have experts here to talk about what they do, but we also have here Father Luis Marie Leonelli, who has been a member of the community of Franciscan Friars of the Renewal since 2001. And Father Luis has had a journey of faith which began after he retired from business in New York City in 1992 to pursue a music career. And he experienced a conversion from his hedonistic and materialistic lifestyle through the Blessed Virgin Mary in 1993 in the village of Medjugorje in Bosnia-Herzegovina that eventually led him to the Franciscans. And he was ordained a priest in 2009 and is the director of St. Anthony's Shelter for Renewal in the South Bronx, where he currently resides. And one of the purposes of having Father Luis here, as well as Lawrence, who we'll hear from later, is to hear really what is the experience of homelessness on a personal level. What is it, in particular, the experience of the family for homeless people who fall into homelessness? What is the experience of the family, and how can they be helped? How can the family be strengthened and support beyond the technocratic measures, beyond housing and social protection policy? So, Father Luis, if you press the button here, then there you go.
Thank you, Stefano. And if you don't mind, I am a priest. I would like to start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Jesus, we turn to you who created all things and sustains all things, and we ask that with the aid of your Holy Mother Mary and your earthly stepfather, St. Joseph, that your holy family, the model for all families, not only guide this discussion, but also influence government leaders throughout the world to promote policies and laws to protect and preserve authentic family life, the fundamental cell of every society. And we ask this in your holy name. Amen. So I also would like to thank you, Stefano, and CFAM for this invitation. This is actually an answer to a prayer of mine since my conversion, especially, obviously I want to live out the mandates of the gospel, and Jesus says to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth, and somehow, in some limited way, I can touch the whole planet through the representation of those that are here at this discussion and those who may hear it in the future in the recorded version. And I didn't realize you were going to read my bio. I was going to give a little testimony of my life just to give a little background of, and maybe prove my, in a sense, credentials for discussing issues on family life and even the breakdown of the family and homelessness. Because I was born into an amazing family. We had healthy soil. I'm one of 6 children, and all of my brothers and sisters are successful, and they have solid families. They're all in their first marriages, and my 3 brothers are all grandfathers, and I have a sister who dedicated her life to God also. She's a cloistered nun in New Hampshire. But somehow along the way, even in the midst of all my success, I lost my moral compass. And like Stefano had just described, I fell into hedonism and materialism, and I was so self-absorbed in my lifestyle, and I embraced every bit of the worldly allurements. I just thank God I'm not a young man today with the more gadgets and enticements that are available today. But I came to a point in my life where I was financially successful, and my heart's desire was to perform music and to write music. So I left the business world, and in the midst of this conversion, this time period, my mom who's a very holy woman and very prayerful woman, had encouraged me to go on a pilgrimage. And I reluctantly agreed to do so, and it was the best choice I ever made in my life, because in this little village called Medjugorje in former Yugoslavia, I met Jesus face to face, fell madly in love with him. He totally transformed my life in an instant. and it's inexplicable in human terms. It's a divine moment that I had. It's called a conversion. It's similar to what St. Paul in the scriptures had. And it put me on a whole new course of life. And in that moment, and almost instantaneously, I had this revelation that the love of God and neighbor was the most important reason to exist. And that family was the most fundamental and necessary relationship. Because when the family is healthy, life flourishes. When it's broken, people are wounded and they struggle. And so I came to understand this more concretely soon after I got back from this pilgrimage as a new man in Christ. And I was involved in a business in Newark, New Jersey. And through this business, I met some of the young sons of some of my customers who were dropped out of school, getting into drugs and getting arrested. And I offered to help one young man, which parlayed into the most amazing 7-year street ministry, probably the best 7 years of my life, because I wasn't encumbered by the obedience of a religious life. I was free to live in the gutters with these young men and their family members. And I was able to use my wealth, my time, all my talents to serve them and to try to nurture them back into life. I have so many stories of miraculous events and moments of grace. I would feed these young men, clothe them. I put families in apartments. I even took an apartment in the inner city and took in kids that were the worst cases that had no place to go, and I became their surrogate father in a sense. But the common denominator with all of these young people that I was working with was a broken family life, and also, most specifically, the lack of a father in the family. And so these boys and these young men had already experienced or were destined for incarceration, drug dealing, drug usage, unemployment, a life of poverty, unwed pregnancies, and ultimately, at some point, they would become homeless. There's no doubt about it. And so what I desired to do, I knew it was on the possible horizon, but I was just trying to circumvent some of that for some of the men, and at the very least, I desired to give them hope, because our hope is for heaven. Our hope is not here on earth, and so yes, many of them may never have been able to acquire a beautiful home and have a real family and maintain employment. When you're 24 years old and unable to read, there's not much available for you. And this was the situation for a good number of my boys. So after the 7 years, I felt the Lord calling me to this community. So I joined in 2001. And our community was established in 1987 in the Bronx. And specifically to live a life of poverty in neighborhoods noted for poverty, to serve the poor in our neighborhoods. That's the whole purpose of our community, the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. And so the same year that we began in 1987, we began our first homeless project. There was a little homeless shelter in the basement of a school building that we acquired from the diocese. And now that has graduated to a 7-story building that we purchased back in 1991 next to our friary. 7 stories, housing 30 men that come in every single night. And so I asked the question, why did we choose to open a homeless shelter? And there's so many other outreaches, and we had a few others. But because the homeless are considered the outcasts of society, and there may be even the modern-day lepers, who are considered a nuisance and a burden on society by many. And so these are the very people that Jesus requires us to love, to serve, and sacrifice for, and so that is why we choose to serve the homeless. Now, once again, there's a common denominator among all of the homeless that come through our shelter, and it's the breakdown of the family, and most notably, the absence of the father once again. You know, even those with mental illness have no family network to assist them with their challenges in life. Many of the homeless are mentally ill. But here again, the breakdown of the family has a part to play. I have cousins that have a very severely mentally challenged brother. And these cousins have been parentless for quite some time. Their parents died early on, but the family unit was so complete that they have provided everything for their brother, who's in the most amazing situation. He's not homeless. He's not wandering around the streets. He's cared for in a beautiful way. But this is because of the solid family structure that they had. And so, at the heart of our shelter, a place that men really call a home and not even a shelter, they refuse to call it a shelter at times, is the love of Christ. The very love that comes from God that we share so that each man can recognize his own God-given dignity as a child of God and heir to the kingdom of heaven. This is our mission statement at St. Anthony's Shelter, to build up and protect and support the dignity of every person. A man comes into our front door downtrodden, broken, depressed, and within days, when they experience the love that we share and the humanity of our shelter and the beauty and the love that flows through our walls and through the missionaries that live with us. We have a series of maybe 5 to 8 missionaries every year that take a year of their life to serve the men with us, and it is nothing but a love fest. And this is what reinvigorates the men and helps them to realize that they are a person created from love, to be loved. And so we try to impart this heavenly perspective using all of the material goods that we have at our disposal, the food, the place, the fun. We go on camping trips, and we have bingo nights, and we instituted recently a waffles and ice cream night that was inspired by my meeting with my mom and dad down in South Carolina, just reminiscing about good old times, and the guys love it. We just recently had our first Zeppele night. How beautiful it was. The men could not believe it. But we're touching them on the human level, but raising them up to the divine level, because they know through our words, through our actions, through our prayers, that this love is coming directly from the heart of God, that we have been commissioned by God to love them in a very particular way. And this is transformative, because this is why we were created. And so we try to create this family dynamic. And one of the things that we do in a family dynamic is listen. One of my greatest gifts that I have as director of the shelter is to be able to interview every man that comes through our door and address every issue that takes place under our roof. And I used to have a red seat in my office, and every time I would call a man in, he'd say, "Oh no, not the red seat," but they loved it because I treated them with respect. And most of the time when I'm meeting with a man, I just listen. Now, these are homeless men that maybe most people wouldn't even look at during the day, never mind ask advice or listen to. And so I'll listen for 2 hours. And at the end of the session, the man will thank me that I just listened to him. How many men sit in my chair and I'm correcting very basic things, and how they break down crying? Nobody ever told me that. They're crying because they're missing their fathers. They never had their father. And they could feel the fatherly love coming from me, and it's transformative. I see people come alive before my eyes. And so this is all created in this family dynamic, this family environment that we try to create at our shelter. And many men even admit that they have become our family. I have one sitting right next to me here, Lawrence. He has become what I call my brother from another mother, and he will share his beautiful testimony soon. But the bonds that happen with the love of God go deeper than even blood bonds. And so this happens at our shelter so often. And so we see how having merely a sense of family, just having the sense of family, not even a real family, a genuine, bona fide family, brings life and hope to a man who has been neglected by those entrusted to love and nurture them. And so, many men are even reluctant to even come to our shelter. We go and feed the people on the streets quite often, the men, the homeless men and women, and we invite them into our shelter, but they are so reluctant because they had very bad experiences in typical shelters. And but the men that come to our shelter are not a number or an income generator. They are our friends, they are our brothers, with whom we enter into a relationship. As a matter of fact, I feel like when I'm sitting in the dining room with the men, I feel like I'm sitting in my own dining room at home, having a meal with my own brothers. And, governments, what I've come to realize through my interaction with government agencies and through our working at our own personal shelter, governments in general are not familiar with the divinely imprinted needs and dispositions of the human person, and therefore they cannot perfectly respond to them in the most healthy and beneficial way. There are policies that are promoted, protected, and sometimes forced upon populations, many done so in good faith, that are actually destructive to the family unit and which precipitate the decay of individuals and families. And many of these policies, seen from a Christian perspective, are considered immoral and are inherently destructive to individuals, families, and society. And many of these are they're the typical hot buttons: contraception, abortion, euthanasia, same-sex marriage, promotion of gender ideology and fluidity, embracing and promoting a sexual ethic that contradicts or distorts the notion of what constitutes a family, as well as blurring the natural and God-ordained male-female roles by promoting unhealthy and damaging ideologies such as fornication, homosexuality, transgenderism, and especially when exposing young children to them. And also we have the economic practices that in effect discourage family growth or stability. But I would have to say that the moral issues are the more dangerous because, just as Jesus taught, they come from within. And these are the things that defile a person. Hearts become corrupt and people become wounded, and then social ills are then continually proliferated. And so I have to say, faith-based initiatives are extremely vital to addressing the issues of family life, homelessness, because they understand the human person and desire to sacrifice for love of the other. This is something that can only come from divine revelation and lived out most perfectly. If you don't have this perspective of the human person, yes, they become a number. There could become an ideology that money will solve the problems. Money doesn't solve problems. Money creates problems. Money can help in the solving of the problems, but we need to connect with people heart to heart, person to person. So at St. Anthony's, we strive to live this, and we strive to do this by giving them the best of everything, but most importantly, the best of truth. You know, when a man comes in, we just had a new man come in this morning, and we have a list of rules and regulations, and we pronounce, and they must agree that we are a Catholic institution, and everything we do is going to be run by Catholic moral principles. In other words, they have to be approved by God. And if they are, they will be the best. And we will share with them the greatest amount of truth, that especially that God loves them and wants them for himself. And so we provide the best meals possible. We hold them accountable. They have to be clean and sober while they're with us. They have to be clean and responsible. They have a chore every day, and we provide beautiful experiences to lift their hearts, like the waffles and ice cream night, and camping trips, and beach excursions, and we even, and something very dear to my heart is we try to help restore broken family relations. This is extremely important, to build those bridges and rebuild those bridges and help people connect with their loved ones. So these are different and varied ways of telling the men that we love them and God loves them. As a matter of fact, I was given a special gift, unscripted here, on the way here. Lawrence and I were walking from the subway to the UN building, and a man comes up to me that I vaguely recognized, and sure enough, he was a man from our shelter from 10 years ago who was so ecstatic to see me, and he was so grateful and so joyful, and he was so, he's plugged in, he's working, he's employed, he has a beautiful apartment. You could see the joy on his face, and it was just just a little flower for preparing for this presentation today. And so I just want to give one little quote from Pope Francis. He says, "The family is the foundation of coexistence and a remedy against social fragmentation. Children have a right to grow up in a family with a father and a mother capable of creating a suitable environment for the child's development and emotional maturity." And so the more governments and organizations support and foster a healthy family life, the healthier our society will become. And I must say, however, that this will never be fully realized unless governments recognize God as the author of life. So I don't know the scope of all of your influence or authority in the nations you represent, those of you who may be listening to this talk and may be here in the room, but I pray that you will do everything in your power to help create healthy environments for families to flourish and for societies to exist in peace and prosperity. So I thank you for your time and attention, and may our Almighty and loving Father bless you through the hearts of the most holy family of Nazareth, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father Lewis. And really that brings us to Lawrence Hampton, who is here with us. He's a husband, a father, and a former guest of St. Anthony's Shelter in the Bronx. And Lawrence, really, this whole event is designed for you, because you're the one I wanted to hear from. You're the one we wanted to bring here to hear your experience, to hear your voice, and to see how you were helped in your situation when you fell down into homelessness. So the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for waking us all up this morning, bringing us here. Because without He, there's no we. Homelessness, I'm very familiar with that subject because I come from a broken home. You know, my mother and father separated when I was 10 years old due to the fact that my father couldn't stop drinking. You know, he was a chronic alcoholic. And I told myself when I was little that I'd never be like my father. They say never say never. Because my life ended up being consisted of drugs, alcohol, institutions. As I sit here and speak to you right now, you know, I have 2 bullets in my spine. I used to be paralyzed from my waist on down. I stayed in the wheelchair for 2.5 years. They told me I'd never walk again, but you know, doctors are doctors, but there's only one God. I'm so overwhelmed and grateful to be here today. Thank you. Thank the CFAM family for having me. Thank you, my brothers and sisters, for being here. April 3rd, 2017, after years of back and forth into drug programs, I went to detox rehab up in the Bronx, Lebanon, for about the 5th, 6th time. The only thing was different, this time I went, I had my mind made up to start living, because I started, you know, drinking at 9 and using drugs at 13. And I didn't stop till April 3rd, 2017, from when I was 9 years old. So, you know, and I may look young, but in 4 months I'll be 60 years old. You know, people look at me and they say, "You look good, how you do it?" I tell them, God been better than me than I've been to myself. That's the only answer. I don't take credit for something you're doing. I left May 2nd, I left there, and I wound up by the grace of God, because I was supposed to go to this place in Harlem called ARC, and I'm glad I didn't go there because I've been there before. I wound up at St. Anthony's Renewal. I remember when I was in detox, everybody was telling me, "Yo, you don't want to go there. There's priests there. You got to get up 5:30 in the morning. You got to leave out early. They're going to try to convert you and all of this. There's no room. There's no doors on the room." I said, "Look, It got me when they said you got your own room. I don't care about a door. Who needs a door? So, I went there. I was real nervous. When you first go there, you got to take the breathalyzer and a urine test. It took me like 3 blows on that breathalyzer because I was so nervous. They were like, take your time, breathe. One of the missionaries, Tom, I'll never forget him. I call all the missionaries my little brothers, because that's what they are. That's my family. The ones that's going, we still stay in touch, and the ones that's there now. And I miss them every time they go, So I went there, and they told me, okay, you able to get in. Go get your stuff and come back at 5, So I went back, I took a cab down from where I was at, Bronx River on to the shelter. Going back, I walked all the way back because I was that happy. So, I got there. So, this guy Manny was there. He was telling me, we got to go out at 6:45. The only way you can stay in for a while if you're tired. You can stay, Mass is from 7:30 to 8:30, sometimes 9 o'clock. Stay in, you ain't got to go out. I said, sound good to me. So we went, the first one I went to Mass, second day, third day. So that third day, them few days I went to Mass, something happened to me inside, something touched me inside that now, today, I understand what it was. It was the Holy Spirit that touched me. And I thank God for that. See, I wasn't afraid to go to St. Anthony's and have another man teach me how to be a man again, because I knew I needed help. I couldn't do it on my own. I knew my life was unmanageable. So I went there. I'll never forget. I went up to my room and I looked. The bed was made up all nice. Everything was clean. Got the care package there. When you come in, they take your clothes to wash them and give you new clothes. I still got my khakis they gave me, Old Navy, at my house. I love them. You can zip it up or you can tie it. Nice pants. So, I got up, and after that third day, my man Manny was like, yo, we can go now. We can go back to Master in a few days. We ain't got to go this morning. I said, no, I'm staying, man. I'm going to stay. See, what got me, my soul was dark. I don't mind. My soul was dark inside. I was a lost soul. I was rough around the edges, but I wasn't no fool. I knew I was in the right place. Everything was clean. There was discipline. There was no stealing. There was no robbing. You ain't have to worry about nothing. It was love. To this day, when I walk in St. Anthony, you can feel a love. I bring my family there. My daughters and my wife, they say, well, my daughter, she's 19 now. She's been going there with me for the past 2 years. She's like, you can feel a love in this place. I said, yeah, I know. She said, I see why you always be going back. I said, yeah. So, and I started doing the readings in 2017. I started doing the readings because, you got the reading, then you got the respawn, and then the priest go up and he do the reading. And to today, I still do the readings. I still do the readings up to today. I come back every Sunday. I do the first reading and the respawn, and it's beautiful. It helps me. It keeps me grounded. St. Anthony saved my life. Father Lewis. I mean, when I first went there, the guests told me, it's a nice place, man, but you got to watch out. All the priests is cool. She said, you got to watch out for one person, the hammer. I was like, who's the hammer? They said, you'll see him. He's bald-headed just like you. The only thing you'll know, because he's bald-headed, he's white. You bald-headed, you black. I said, yeah, okay. So I went and I seen him, right? Time I seen him, I knew. I said, oh, boy, but that's why you can't judge a book by the cover. He got a good heart. That's my priest, my best friend, my brother. I love you unconditionally. Thank you for helping me get my life back on track. Thank you for giving me a life. Because if it wasn't for St. Anthony's, I don't know where I'd be at now, I've been all over. I've been up to Massachusetts for the Divine Mercy. I go all over sharing my testimony. Me and Father Lewis, we've been to hospitals. It's like, I call myself the mascot of St. Anthony's, because whenever there's an event, that somebody need to speak, he always bring me with him. I have been with a brother that we had before with us called Brother Simon. We've been all over. I have made 2 documentaries with some brothers that was one brother Brother Juniper that went to England. You know, I made a documentary with him. The people came from England. I made one with Brother Simon from some people from Jersey. The Divine Mercy that I went to up in Massachusetts, you know, they have it every year. It was an honor to go there. We had to stay for 2 days and wear the same thing, sit in the same seats, up and down, kept singing up and down, you know, but it was beautiful, you know, it was a cleansing. You know, I'm glad I'm where I'm at today because St. Anthony got so much love in there, you know, it's like Father Lewis said, you know, it's like when, you know, at the dinner, everybody's sitting there eating, there's no arguing, there's no, it's not to be tolerated anyway, but there's just peace, you know. Okay, you get a knucklehead every now and then. I rephrase myself. You get a person every now and then that come through that is so disturbed inside that he's not ready for that kind of scenery yet, because it took me a long time to leave the streets alone, you know. But I never had so much love in my life like I have today. My best friends today are brothers, priests, and sisters. If somebody would have told me 5 years ago that my best friends would have been some sisters and some priests, I would have said like, yeah, you crazy. You just pass the beer, you know? But today I'm so glad to be where I'm at. I'm grateful to be. I'm a proud, grateful, blessed Franciscan today, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I never thought I'd have a life like I have now, you know. You know, I never thought that I would have the love of my life from others, you know, like, I like where I'm at today because I don't have to be judged, you know, and I learned not to judge, because you never know what a person going through. You never know what a person going through, what kind of background they had, what caused them to be. Because everybody that's homeless, you know, that's out there, you know, they're not bad people. You know, people come across some rough times, some rough breaks. Because me, myself, I had choices. I just made the wrong choices. And today I'm glad to sit here with y'all and be able to say that I'm a man today. Because before, the way I was living, I wasn't a man. Because being a man, you deal with responsibilities. Today, I have 34 months and 15 days clean and sober from nicotine, all drugs, alcohol, and everything. The only drugs that go into my body is the ones that the doctor prescribed for me, and none of them is a narcotic. God has taken care of his child right here. And at my age, see, I'm at the age where I can see and recognize and appreciate my blessings. You know, I was telling my cab driver yesterday, you know, I had a good talk with him. He was from the islands, and we was talking. And I remember we was talking about religion, we was talking about God. And the last thing I told him, I went to get out, and I told him, I said, you know, what's wrong? People always saying, I want this, you know, I need this, I need that. You know, some people even lose faith in God, you understand me? But if you can't recognize the small things that God is doing for you, what make you think that you deserve anything greater? And I say this for myself first. I always keep it on the eye. And I done slept on trains. I slept in buildings. Smell coming through my clothes. I've been there. I don't use every drugs except for needles because I'm scared of needles. But what didn't go in the needle went up my nose. I gave up 17 years out of my life in institutions, back and forth. I go through chronic pain because I got 2 bullets in my spine and I suffer pain. But with my pain today come glory, because I know it can be worse because it's been worse. I love the people that's in my life now. When I see people I used to hang with and use drugs with, you know, I don't turn my back on because I'm not better than nobody because who I am today. I stand in, I talk with them, but I keep it moving. I'm not better than nobody, but I make better choices today. November 19th, 2017, the day of the poor, I got baptized at St. Anthony's. I had all my 3 confirmations. It was a beautiful day. There was so many people there. And I had a bishop came. He was about him with 15 people from France, you know, and it was just a beautiful thing. It was so lovely. It was amazing. And, you know, it's amazing what God can do for you if you let him. And I learned that. And, you know, I'm a newbie. I'm still young at this. I'm still learning. That's why Father Lewis, he went into somebody, they talking about something, I listen, you know, because I would never know everything, but I listen. You know, you got to listen to learn. And, you know, they say, take the cotton out of, we got a saying in the program, say, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. You know, keep your ears open and keep your mouth shut. Because if you always doing this, you can't learn nothing. You got to be open-hearted and open-minded. And that's who I am today. You know, it's just amazing. I have my life back. I don't have to sleep on the trains no more. I don't have to sleep in buildings. I don't have to stand in front of stores. Excuse me, you got 50 cents, yo, you got $1, yo, you got this, yo, you got this, and take the money, don't even buy nothing to eat and go buy drugs and go right back again and do the same thing. Panhandling or whatever I had to do to survive. Not survive, to support the monster I had in me. You know, it's a shame when you're a grown man and you want to be all tough and bad, but it is a little tiny piece of rock like this that control your whole life. That's something to look at. But you gotta be clear-headed in order to see that, you know, and I see all that today. I walk down the streets, I see people that I don't even know. I speak to them, they're homeless, I talk to them. Bro, I have people today that call my phone, you know, they text me, they call me, I talk to them, men and women that I met through Facebook, but, you know, they all Christian people from different backgrounds, Catholic, Baptist, everything. And it's amazing how you know, I never thought that I would be able to help nobody, give nobody any good word of wisdom other than I know where the drugs is at, the good stuff, you know what I mean? Now I tell people, I know where the good stuff is at, come on with me. You know, some of my associates that I used to be with, I'm not going to call them friends because the only thing we had in common was the drugs. You know, I lost a lot of brothers and sisters through drugs. My mother had 8 kids, 5 boys and 3 girls. I lost 2 of my brothers. First brother I lost to alcoholism. My second brother just passed December, made 10 years, he passed away of cancer. On his deathbed, he came to me, he asked me to take care of his girls. They was 10 and 13 at the time. Him and their mother wasn't married. He was still married to his wife. Make a long story short, my story is a biblical one. I ended up marrying their mother. Today, they're 19 and 22. One is in college. And it's a beautiful thing. He came to me, he said, I need you to leave the drugs alone. I went and started taking care of them, but I didn't leave the drugs alone at that time. But I never thought that it would be so easy, that all I had to do was give my life over to God and everything would have been as it is now. Oh, don't get me wrong, every day is not a good day. Some days it's better than others. But all in reality, for me, every day is a good day as long as I open my eyes. Anything after that is a bonus. I got food, clothing, and shelter. I got my health, and I got my God watching over me, Mother Mary and all the other saints and angels. What more can a man ask for? I've learned not to always think about what I want as long as I got what I need. And Once again, Father Lewis, I thank you for having patience with me, get me on the right track, being a brother, a friend to me and my family, helping me through rough times. And with that, I'm clear. Thanks for letting me talk. Thanks for having me here. God bless everyone.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you. It's really edifying and moving to hear you. And I'll just I don't think we'll have time for questions, but maybe we will. I just want to point out one thing, that the family was so central. It's so central to the United Nations project. If you look, there's that mural in the Security Council, the UN Security Council. Everyday life and death decisions over the lives of millions of people are taken in the Security Council. And the painter who drew the mural in the council in 1948, he read the UN Charter, he read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and he said, how can I depict what this project of the United Nations is about? And he looked, and he drew the world emerging out of poverty and war. In the forefront, you see darkness, slavery, and the new world in the foreground, full of light, joy, scenes of development, industry. But at the heart of it all, if you look closely, there's a vignette representing the family. And the family is superimposed with the phoenix, because the painter of this mural read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and he realized it says, the family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society. And the way he thought he could depict that is, it's the phoenix. The family is the phoenix, which regenerates society in every generation. And it's so beautiful. It's so beautifully depicted. And but sadly, today, more and more, this norm of the family in international law, the natural and fundamental group unit of society, the complementarity of men and women in the context of marriage, is more and more challenged. And the deconstruction of these norms can only endanger not only humanity, but also the United Nations project itself. And so I would invite everyone to hold fast to these norms. As the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says, the family is entitled to social protection, to support, and to the widest possible protection and assistance. And with that, I hear we have, you know what, I think we can take one question here, since we have, I know you wanted to raise it before. Please, if you can identify yourself and ask the question.
Richard Nelson with Latter-day Saint
Could you please speak into the mic so that...
Richard Nelson with Latter-day Saint Charities. I think we're a partner of the great charitable work that you do, and thank you to the panel and for your discussion. So we're certainly more than 100% committed to what you've all recommended. But as I've been here for a year. I'm a volunteer full-time. I'm a former CEO for the last 20 years in the tech industry. But what I see is we are losing ground here at the United Nations where it matters on this issue of families matter, stable families matter. And how can these discussions here at the UN, a side event sponsored by the Holy See and other permanent representatives, how can we reverse that? If you research the last 5 years of resolutions, the family has been omitted and eliminated from almost all, if not all, discussions and resolutions. That doesn't bode well for families, and I'm talking about families that are inclusive. And you know our position as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints about families. It's very similar to the Holy Sees. But we need to be inclusive. And how can CFAM, that has a very good reputation, you've got a lot more expertise than a recruited CEO and my wife for a couple of years to do this diplomatic mission. But we're very committed to changing this and having families be relevant again in this discussion with the 193 that matter here. How can that happen with CFAM's influence, the Holy See's influence? I think your Archbishop is superb. We have many friends, as you know. How can we do this together? And really, how can we do something that's actionable? These are wonderful sessions, but I think everybody here would embrace everything you've said, including the wonderful prayers. I love what you've shared, and I love what the charity is doing, but we need to do something that's actionable, and that's what tech CEOs have done in this country, and I helped them do that through a leadership role I had in North America, where I was the co-founder of 50 groups. It pains me to see what's happening to stable families. Broad definition matter. Please give some advice on that. And let's go do something about this.
Yes, thank you for the question, and we can certainly continue this conversation after the side event. As just a preliminary matter, I have to clarify that we do not speak for the Holy See, although all of us on the panel actually are Catholics. But CFAM itself is not a Catholic organization. But just to clarify it, because you mentioned the Holy See, I don't want the Holy See to come at me and tell me that we're representing them. We're not. We are not the Holy See. Just to clarify that. We have been there have been some results in UN policy on the issue of family. Of course, the biggest obstacle right now is the European Union, because the European Union is not able to is basically holding the entire world hostage to mentioning even the family in any UN document, in any UN resolution, until every country on earth is willing to recognize family diversity. And you know, that totally undermines what international law says about the family. So the European Union is basically saying, unless you're willing to undermine what your international law says about the family and to reinterpret international law to mean that anything can mean family, then we're not even going to mention the family in any UN document. That's basically the big obstacle that we have currently. And what needs to happen is there needs to be political accountability for the European Union, which there isn't much there. The European Union is a bureaucratic institution with not a lot of accountability, and still they're able to muzzle a lot of European member states that have rather socially conservative values with regards to family as well. This is not to say, you know, the EU is bad or anything. It's just saying those are the dynamics of the negotiations that are ongoing now. And I think with time and the political realities of countries, what will happen is more and more the EU will have to change position. But what's essential is political accountability. So with that, I will just close this event. Thank you so much to Father Lawrence, Marion, for coming out and speaking at the United Nations. And thank you to all of you who have come and listened, and to many and all of those of you who are listening from your computers. Thank you very much.